have here is typed in here, and if it gets to be a little boring, just shake me up and let me know. Okay, is that better? All right. Okay, so he already gave you a lot of my information here, so I'll start from here. 1967 began when the ship was anchored at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Everybody knows about Guantanamo Bay these days, I think. And we were getting ready to go to Vietnam at that point. I'll start right here. 1967 began when the ship was anchored in Guantanamo, following a brief stop at Boston Naval Yard after they were done firing rounds and making sure that the cannons worked. We went to Boston Naval Yard. The ship was designated to join the 7th Fleet, Vietnam, due to the fact that the Vietnam War was accelerating and they had a lot of ships that they needed to get from the East Coast to the West Coast. It was many, many years later that I found out that our ship was the first East Coast one to join the West Coast. After the overnight at Yorktown to load ammunition, the Boston was on its underway to the Panama Canal. And I'll give you a little interest of the Panama Canal. It was an interesting place. We were within a few yards of the edge of the canal, and in various uncultivated portions of the canal, I was close enough to see some jungle creatures such as monkeys, colorful birds, and various critters that were within the view of or hearing of the crew. Once clear of the canal, the ship was bound for a 3-day stop at Pearl Harbor. Nice place, really nice, especially when you're in the Navy. It's a lot of fun there. Okay. Once the USS Boston, that was a World War II era ship that fought in the Pacific Ocean, World War II, we were put together with cruiser destroyer flotilla number 9, and we went to the Gulf of Tonkin on April 17th, and everything became serious from that point on. The main operation that the USS Boston and her crew were tasked with titled the Operation Sea Dragon, and it was the reason that we were shuttled from the East Coast to the West Coast. The North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong were using the South China Sea and Tonkin Gulf and other waterways as a conduit to bring food, supplies, troops, and weapons from China and possibly other locations to the demilitarized zone, which is known as DMZ. And other locations there, they could transfer these supplies to the troops and the southern regions of Vietnam. Several other ships took part in this operation, and from time to time we grouped together to force the enemy to leave the enemy's to leave the enemy vessels designated as waterborne logistics craft. From now on, I'll call them WIBLICs. That's what we called them when we were in country. Okay, and so let me find my place here. Our other main task was to provide gunfire support to the U.S. Marine Corps whenever needed. As our tour of duty stretched on, other operations were added to the Boston's load, one of which was Operation Hickory and Operation Bow Charger. That took place on May of in May. Okay. This was the largest naval and Marine Corps beach invasion since the Korean War. The Viet Cong set up hundreds of foxholes in the demilitarized zone from which they fired mortar rounds and missiles. The DMZ, for your information, was 3 miles wide by 160 miles long, so there was an awful lot of area to cover. Okay, so the Viet Cong had an area where they fired mortars and missiles at the Marine Corps. These holes were so well built and stuffed with logs and dirt and other materials that would deflect artillery. The DMZ, okay, I already mentioned about the size of it, okay, and there were, due to the Geneva Convention, they had an agreement that there were no armed troops in this region. In fact, however, the Viet Cong regularly used the DMZ as a staging area for attacks on the Marines, specifically on an area known as Leatherneck Square. There were 4 different Marine units there, and that's why it's called Leatherneck Square. Eventually, M48 tanks were used to destroy the enemy bunkers. The American retaliatory assault on the DMZ began on May 18, 1967. Of this op was titled Bow Charger. The third component of this operation was for the South Vietnamese Army allies. This operation was very similar to attacks that took place during the Pacific Island campaigns of World War II. The naval portion of this op consisted of 3 cruisers and 5 destroyers. The Boston and the adjoining fleet firing 5-inch and 8-inch artillery shells on the DMZ before dawn, and only temporarily ceasing fire when helicopters and LCVPs, they are called Landing Craft Vehicle Personnel, that's an LCVP, began storming the beach. The 8-inch and 5-inch guns were called upon to provide naval gunfire support during the remainder of the battle. The Boston fired over 14,000 combined 8-inch and 5-inch rounds during the 99-day combat of the USS Boston. Our guns were capable of firing a 330-pound shell at least 16 miles at the time. The shell's propellant that we utilized consisted of 2 8-inch diameter silk bags and stuffed with black gunpowder weighing 43 pounds each. The way it was done is that the actual shell would be sent up onto the gun, and then it would be rolled into place and pushed in by a rammer into the gun itself. And then each of these 2 bags would be put in, one by me and one by an associate right next to me, who would slide them into this same metal trough. And then again, we would put the rammer in it, and it would put it all the way into the gun. The next thing that would happen following that would be the officer who was in charge of setting up the firing of the gun. We would step back about a foot, and then the round would go out of the shell, like I said, 16 miles. And so this, just to close this up, this was not a one-sided activity. The Boston was fired upon on 11 occasions, often with multiple rounds during our 6-month tour in the combat zone. Some were near misses. Okay, let me just find my page here, excuse me. Some were near misses. On occasion, an enemy round was close enough, within 5 yards from the hull of the ship, to raise the bow, including the gun turrets, out of the water. My tour of duty ended after the first Vietnam cruise. There were 3 cruises that took place, that one in 1967, and then there were 2 others, 1968 and 1969, and that is the total of my wartime operation. Okay. Thank you.